What the Tech is brought to you by TextExpander. TextExpander helps you communicate smarter. Visit textexpander.com/podcast for 20% off your first year.
What's the tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew here, and of course I'm joined by Mr. Paul Thurrott. How you doing, Paul?
Pretty good. Oh god, I'm messing my offices.
I can't. Oh yeah, what is that? Crutches in the back?
No, those are from the poles that held up that fake brick background.
Are you putting it back up?
No, I'm reorienting my office. I'm sort of shifting it.
I'm excited
I'll have
to
some
see
kind
what
of
it
a
looks like.
backdrop.
I'm excited to see what it looks like.
might
Last
paint.
week, I actually got to see you in the city for a very short period of time.
Yeah,
It was only a
sorry, it
couple
was so brief.
minutes. Yeah.
Well, you saw me more than Tina did.
Tina did not get to see you at all,
Yeah,
right? Is that what it was?
yeah.
'Cause
Dude, we were in New York
left.
City for less than 24 hours.
That's not a fun trip.
I mean, I had the briefing and my wife had a couple of meetings, and then, we had to be back because we had that concert to go to on Thursday. So and Windows Weekly to do on Thursday. So it just kind of worked out. We had to go in and out.
So you were at the Microsoft event. That's why you were in
Mhm.
town.
Yep.
I do want to talk about that because there's a lot to talk about for that. Before we go into the details, what was the actual, the feel of the event in general? Is it getting
Honestly,
a little
it was-
Apple-ish?
No, I don't think so. But I mean, maybe I'm just used to the Microsoft stuff. I mean, you mean in the sense that they had like a crowd cheering.
Yeah.
So there were two down notes to the event, unfortunately. One was that I think Panos was sick. Something was off with him. And,
I noticed that when I was watching the keynote, watching
by
the
the
thing.
way,
It was very noticeable.
He walked up to me before the event, and I asked him what was wrong.
What did he say?
Like before anything even started, I was like, "What's wrong with you? You look terrible." And he said he was going to be fine, but I think he was sick.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
It's also a lot of pressure, especially when you're sick.
Well, yeah, but come on, he's been doing
I
this
know.
for 7 years. I mean, and they had some exciting things to talk about. The other issue, the one you were raising, is they invited fans, and I'll put those, fans in like air quote fans, and to be down front and cheer, and they cheered too much, and they cheered at nothing, and it was terrible. And I talked to a bunch of guys from Microsoft about this afterwards, and I don't think they're going to get rid of them, but I think they're going to instruct them this time. Maybe when we announce something that's innocuous, don't act like we just launched someone to the moon.
Listen,
it was really bad.
So somebody messaged me that was there. It wasn't you, it wasn't Mary Jo, it wasn't Brad. It was somebody else. And they go,
Okay.
I said, "How's the event?" Because I was trying to get in touch with you, and you weren't answering because I kept messaging you for some reason.
Dude, I'm never going to see that.
I don't know why
Yeah.
it was doing that. My phone was
Yeah.
automatically doing that because it assumed that you're on iMessage and you're not. So I'm like, "Hey, listen," I'm like, "What's going on with the event?" He goes, "It's a little Apple-ish." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He
Yeah.
goes, a lot of cheering and applause and pausing, and I was like, "Huh, that's interesting." So when I was watching,
It was disruptive. It was, and the Apple events tend to be at these really big venues. This was a smaller venue, so they were right on top of us, and it was really loud. And you could watch the presentation for yourself. I'm sure it's on YouTube or whatever.
Yeah.
And you might have noticed it when you watched it live. They disrupted the presentation at least twice. Like there were moments where the presenters had to figure out what they were talking about, because it was like, what are you clapping at? It was terrible. But whatever. I honestly, between Panos obviously not feeling well and those idiots, I think the thing that saved it was at the end they had these two exciting announcements, one of which had not really leaked. And I think that kind of cured all the problems, because there was a lot to talk about.
So let's talk about the two big ones.
Yeah.
Obviously, last week when we did the show, we did it on Monday, and it was prior to you coming to New York. And essentially, we thought everything, and a lot of people thought everything was already leaked. And I believe you said on the show that there is going to be there's going to be something at the end.
Yeah.
You,
A
you
one more
hadn't.
thing kind of a thing.
Yeah, there was going to be a one more thing,
It
and
was
a
the
lot of
two more things.
speculation started. There was two more things.
Yeah.
A lot of speculation. A lot of people. I think a lot of people were envisioning this folded device. We were talking about will
Yeah.
they actually show a device? Will they not? I thought maybe they would show like a render. They actually showed a device, two devices. So
Yeah,
let's talk about
prototypes.
these.
There were prototypes.
They were
So
yeah.
just up front, I mean, last week's show, we'd had a bunch of leaks. That's what we discussed. We had everything except for one of the products, and we didn't have the right name for the Surface Pro X.
Yeah, we didn't have that.
Actually, I should go back a little further because back in May when Microsoft had their build conference, I found out they were working on a phone. And my reaction to that was, "You've got to be effing kidding me! Please tell me you're joking." And the person I spoke with said, "Look, there are people in Microsoft who have the power to push this through, and they're pushing on it, and
So let me
it's
ask
going
you
to happen."
this.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm assuming it was the same thing that I had heard. I had not heard that it was going to be a foldable phone.
No, that's right. But what I'm trying to say is, at the time, I felt like this was important enough that I needed to. I needed to start talking about it just to kind of prep people for this, because you got to understand, like, Microsoft exited the phone market in dramatic fashion, right? It was like a write off of the entire, $8 billion Nokia purchase, whatever. Um, Obviously, it doesn't make sense for them to come back to the market with any kind of a Windows phone, but they've been working on this Android stuff, and they have all the pieces in place. And I was given a financial justification for this. That Microsoft at its current size is not interested in little boutiquey businesses. For it to fly at Microsoft today, the business has to be a $1 billion business, and what that means is it generates $1 billion in revenues in a quarter. It's
Yeah.
really easy to do that with a phone business, even a small phone business, right?
So was
And
your assumption that it was going to be they were just going to get into the Android game? They were just going to have, maybe
Yeah, in other
mid-range.
words, yeah. So Microsoft has its own launcher. It has its own search engine. It has its own keyboard. Obviously, it has a bunch of apps. It has its own digital assistant. It has the ability to take stock Android, plug its own stuff in on top of it, do all that deep integration with Windows on the desktop, and there is some value to this. They have mobile management capabilities through Intune and through System Center that will help businesses manage these things in the same way that they manage PCs today. And so there's a whole ecosystem there. And the big mistake they had made, well, one of the big mistakes they had made with Windows Phone, I should say, was that when that thing first launched, they targeted consumers. They were going after the iPhone market, which was really
Yeah.
stupid. They didn't
Everybody
stick with
was.
their kind of bread and butter business customers. And so this time around, obviously, that's going to be the focus. All right. So that's what I had heard. I didn't hear any names. I didn't hear anything about dual screens. I literally did not hear that they were going to announce it at this event. But as the event was creeping up, I was thinking, the timing is right. We know. I think I probably mentioned this last week. There was this notion that Microsoft was testing two versions of Windows 10 out. They had never done that. Why would they test a version of Windows so far in advance? And I speculated. I never heard this, but I speculated that maybe it was because they're going to announce this new dual screen device at the event, and they need to have the time to add that stuff to the platform to get their developers prepped. That explains the lead time for version 20H1. Now that turned out to be a fact, and so that the first dual screen device that they announced, the Neo, is based on Windows 10. It's a Windows computer. It's not a phone.
Now, it's not a
Dual screen.
foldable display. It's a dual screen
It's
with
a
a
dual
hinge.
screen, right?
Yeah.
And look, if you know anything about Windows today, Windows 10, it started Windows 8, really. You know that there are capabilities that enable you to put two apps side by side on the screen. You can move them around however you want. You can move them across screens. It's not hard to imagine that capability being adapted for this dual screen device. It's the simplest thing in the world. Like, I still have yet to hear a justification for a dual screen device that makes any sense to me. But whatever, everyone's doing it. Microsoft wants to be part of that, so they're doing it. And what the really weird thing is, I don't remember where I was at when I talked with you last week. because this evolved over time. In the confusing week leading up to this event, it seemed like this thing they were going to announce, the software for it was not the Light OS, the Windows Light. I had been told, and others have been told explicitly, that whatever this thing was, they were never going to call it Windows anything, right? And so we sort of shifted it from
Windows
Windows
Light. You're
Light,
talking about, yeah,
yeah, but the name sort of became Light OS, like because it looked like a Chromebook, it looked like it was going to behave like a Chromebook. It wasn't going to be Windows. Now, that is absolutely not what has happened. This thing has come out. It's a new product edition of Windows. It does have that new Chromebook looking UI. It's not a web-based anything. It's a new version of Windows, and it has some technological changes that I think are very important to the platform that should be applied and probably will be applied to mainstream versions of Windows in the future.
I have a question. With that operating system, if I decide, right, and I saw some people asking this, if I decide, I'm like, you know what, I kind of want this on my desktop.
Yeah.
Can I just install it?
No. So initially, no.
Initially, no. It's going to come with the hardware. That's all it is.
I find it really bizarre that Microsoft is promoting this as a version of Windows that was specially tailored for dual screen and folding screen devices, PCs. Like I don't. It's a little bit like the iPad OS thing. It doesn't. The product as it stands today does not justify another version of the OS. It's unclear what the point is. The one thing we had heard about Light OS, which is now called Windows 10X, is that it was aimed for this future where Windows desktop applications would not be the center of the device. It was going to be modern. It was going to be all the things they wanted to do with Windows RT, with S Mode, etc.
I'm looking at the video on Microsoft's website. Yeah. I encourage you guys to go look at it because they kind of give you glimpses of this. And the applications that they're showing, obviously, they're beautiful and they're rendered, and it doesn't look like Windows at all from what you see here.
Yeah,
this is
but
not
it is Windows.
But it is
it
Windows.
Is Windows.
Yeah.
Remember, there was a leak of a Windows build that had the start menu from Windows 10X in it. It was a mistake. It wasn't supposed to go out.
Yeah.
So they're getting rid of the tiles and all that. But look, so I find it very interesting that Microsoft's solution for the post-Windows world, a product that is aimed at thinner and lighter, smaller, less powerful machines, something that could compete with Chromebook, is not a Chromebook like OS at all. It's Windows,
And this is not going to be a cheap. This is not going to be inexpensive.
No, not that particular device, but you got to remember that's the first one. So I do think eventually what you're seeing in Windows 10X will go to other form factors. It will be made available on normal laptops. The technologies that it has inside of it will become part of Windows 10 Home and Pro and whatever else. This is the future of Windows as Microsoft concedes it today. There have been many moments in the recent past where I could have said this is the future of Windows, and then it ended up not really coalescing because it didn't succeed. But as of today, this is their vision for the future of the platform, because again, they're competing with billions of devices on Android, a billion-ish devices on iOS. Those systems are much lighter and smaller and better with the battery. They're tailored specifically for ARM type processors and their unique cores. It's just a different world. So Microsoft has been trying, to get there. This is their latest attempt, and we'll see what comes of that. But
yeah, I'm very curious what this evolves to.
Yeah,
I mean, this again, Microsoft has done a very good job of creating a reference device for the OEMs to somewhat follow.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, other PC makers have been working on these PCs for a long time too. By the way, we know that Dell and Lenovo have specifically come out and publicly and said they're doing it. HP, I've been told by a source, is also going to be part of this. There was some possibility. I thought that one or all three of those guys would have been at this event. They weren't. We'll see. So that was, I mean, again, there in the Microsoft world, we kind of go back to the Courier and the rumors we've had over the past few years. Andromeda and Centaurus, these kind of dual screen devices have been rumored for a long time. They're doing it. Again, I've not heard a great justification for it, other than I can put two apps on the screen that's in front of me on this larger
Yeah.
device. But when I fold this device up, it's still kind of a larger device. And so by folding, it's really two screens, but essentially by folding the screen in half, you get a package that's like a mini tablet in size that you can carry around with you, and it's smaller. And maybe there's some benefit to that. I don't know. He tried to make I don't remember the exact quote he said, but there's a bezel, there's a hardware seam in the middle. It's pretty thick too. And he tried to talk about how there was this magic that occurred when you had this division between the two screens. And it's like, there's no magic. We've been trying to get rid of those seams on dual screen devices for years. Like, nobody wants to see bezels. But I also, it's weird. I've gotten some pushback from this, but human beings are not multitaskers, and it's kind of a goofy thing that we have spent a lot of time and effort in the computer industry, in particular the technology industry, trying to make multitasking something easier.
Yeah.
There are a couple of use cases for two things side by side that make sense. You're viewing some content and you're taking notes on the other side, maybe, right? I mean,
Great example. You're watching the keynote and you're typing.
Yeah. But the truth is you're distracted. And I think that people don't quite understand this. Like, even me, like I was sitting in the room, but if I had a screen with the video up and then a screen with my Twitter thing and I'm tweeting away, I'm going to miss things because in the time it's taking me to type and make the joke that I think is so freaking hilarious that the world has to hear this right now, that I'm missing something he's saying right now. And so it gets worse when you're doing, when you're doing anything really that is not that kind of note-taking experience. The distraction of multiple screens is very real. This is very well understood.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a comment in the keynote where he said, studies have shown that something about dual screens make you, it's like, no, studies have shown nothing like that. Studies show the exact opposite of that the more screens there are, the more distracting it is. It's the reason why people looking at the screen walk into a wall or a lamp or whatever, because you can't do those two things at once. So, I use this example that day. I'll just beat it to death because I think it's a good example. I will go upstairs, like when this show's over, I'm going to stop working at my desk. I'm going to go up on the bed, and I have a laptop I'll use. My phone and iPad will be there, and I'll have some books and stuff because I have this reference material I'm working with as part of that programming Windows series I'm doing. If I actually have screens going on the side of this laptop screen that I'm looking at, that's distracting. It's distracting because someone will comment on an Instagram thing, or a tweet will come in, or an email will come in. And I can't really focus on the thing I'm trying to get, So what I find is I often end up pushing the devices over because it is distracting. And anyone who kind of claims otherwise is not as being intellectually dishonest. We are not, as a species, capable of multitasking. We're just not. That's what texting and driving is. It's just not. We can't do it. So I'm like I said, I don't mean to beat this to death, except that I kind of do. I don't understand. I have yet to hear a good rationalization for a dual screen device. It just doesn't make sense to me.
So
if they could,
they think it's the future. I mean, they think it's the future.
No, I know, and but look, you've watched enough Apple events to understand that when you can't make something work, you make lemonade and then pretend it's a feature. It's like the Surface book hinge that doesn't close all the way. They can go on and on and on about how wonderful this is, but the truth is they want that thing to be flat. The truth is, on that dual screen thing, they were so willing to bring this to market quickly that they went with two screens instead of a folding screen, because a folding screen is really hard to get right, as Samsung and Huawei know. And the ultimate expression of this will be eventually they will have a folding screen, and then the arguments just kind of go away. It's still, maybe the keyboard's still a little small, blah, 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 whatever. But once you have a screen that can actually fold and withstand the folding and unfolding, if you can actually open that thing up and get a larger single screen and then have that keyboard down there, yes, then you've done it. And I think that's the goal, right? And so V1, V2, V3, probably, we're going to have two screens. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm very curious about this device and where they head with this, because it seems like the industry, this is the next thing everybody's kind of jumping into.
Yep.
Did you see CNET ran, and I thought this was pretty interesting. They ran a test on how many folds the Samsung Fold could do.
Right. Right. It's
And
like how many bytes to get to the middle of a Tootsie Roll Pop.
it
You know, the
failed
L.
at about under 200,000 folds, which
Yeah.
would be like 3.5, 4 years.
Yep. Yep.
And
I
it
mean,
failed miserably.
that phone will not be viable for 3 or 4 years, so that's probably okay.
Yeah.
Look, it's people, if you're buying a Samsung Galaxy Fold, or if you're buying even like a Surface Pro 10X, right? Or next year, if you buy a Surface Neo, whatever they call it, really, um, you're taking a chance. Like, you know what you're doing, right? You understand this is V1. It's maybe a little early for this thing. I like to live on the bleeding edge. I want people to interrupt me and ask me what the machine is because it looks cool or different or whatever. There are people like that, and those people are kind of important, right? Because they will provide that crucial feedback that will help drive V2, V3 to be better for more and more people, right? So I think Samsung and these other companies, they probably will get folding displays, right? Remember there was all these videos in the past. It was like the guy gets on the train and he's holding like a giant thing that looks like a newspaper,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but then he swipes on it and it just goes to the next. It's really just a folding screen. He folds it up like it's a paper, puts it under his arm, and I think we
It's
get there,
Microsoft's
right?
future. That was wasn't their future video?
Yeah,
What was it
like
supposed to be?
we'll get there.
2018? Yeah.
Sure.
Listen, it's just the evolution of it, and this is the first
Yeah.
version of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
But I'm sorry. I didn't mean. Sorry to
no,
interrupt.
go
But
ahead. I'm dying here, by the way. My cough is
okay.
returned, and I've been muting
Oh, I'm
myself
sorry.
every second. I think this is the beginning of this evolution of these foldable, futuristic devices.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it wasn't going to be. Remember all these. I mean, even when we first started doing the show 10 years ago, the big thing was in 5 years, newspapers are just going to be these e-ink,
Yeah. Yeah.
foldable. I mean, it's
Yep.
literally like a piece of paper that
There's so
updates on
much.
its own.
Yeah. There's so much that has to happen. One of the. It's so goofy to think about this now because it's so commonplace. But back when Microsoft first started talking about Longhorn, that version of Windows that never really happened, but kind of turned into Windows Vista, one of the things that they we're talking about is, you have this application and it's like a newspaper application. So it's going to look like a newspaper. There'll be like 3 columns of text and it kind of autofills the text in. So it all looks great. Maybe there's a photo in the middle and it all wraps around. It looks really cool. It was something that like apps at the time couldn't really do. But then you stretch the thing out. You make it bigger. Maybe you maximize it on the screen or you shrink it down so that you only have like 1 column of text. But the thing is, it would auto layout itself correctly depending on what the user was doing to the window.
Sure.
It was like magic, right?
And
But
that's now.
oh yeah, no, of course. Mobile apps do this now. It's very common, but at the time it was like, oh my God, this is incredible. That is one of a million things that has to happen for the future of the newspaper thing you're talking about, or the newspaper thing I was just talking about, where it's on like a foldable piece of whatever the material is, and it looks like sort of like a newspaper from the past, but what it really is this Star Trek Buck Rogers thing. And so Samsung and other companies, they're they're kind of experimenting publicly in a way, but we're going to look back on these first bulky, thick, unreliable, crazy devices and laugh. Just like today, a Model T vaguely looks like a car, but doesn't look anything like cars.
Listen,
today, right?
here's a better one. A PDA.
Yeah.
Right, from the late 90s. Take a PDA from the late 90s, hold it next to your phone and say, this was the evolution. This was the beginning of this.
Yeah, this was the beginning. Yep.
This is how it started. I have a couple questions about these the foldable dual display devices.
Before you do that, can I just
Yeah.
I just want to one of the big debates that's happening now is because there's a smaller device too, right? Remember I said back in May I knew they were doing a phone. I decided at the time I would start prepping people for this because I knew it was going to be a freak show when it happened. Didn't think it was happening last week, but before the event we were talking with a bunch of the blogger guys and they were saying, hey, do you think there's going to be any surprises? And I was like, guys, there's a 10% chance they're going to announce a phone today. And Mary Jo was like, no, you're crazy. That's like a 1% chance. I'm like, no, I don't know.
That.
I'm like,
yeah.
I'm telling you, I know it's happening, and I'm starting to think like maybe this is the right time, to announce it, even knowing it's going to be next year before they actually release it, not knowing it was going to be dual screen, right? So now we have this problem because you've got this Neo thing, which is a kind of a small tablet, 2-in-1 type of device running Windows. And now that we also have Duo, which is a phone, like a Samsung Galaxy Fold type of phone, but with 2 screens, not a folding screen.
Yeah.
that's running Android, you know, and objectively, logically, it makes tons of sense that Microsoft would choose Android, not use Windows on a phone. Nobody wants a Windows phone. The market has proven this. But
Don't you dare say that, Paul.
I know, I
Don't you
know.
dare say that.
But there are some people who think, what's the app story, whatever. So as of today, we don't know. I asked a bunch of people, including some people pretty high up at Microsoft, about the app story, the developer story. I was told at the time it would be in the next few weeks we would find out the details
for the
Android phone. Like, in other words,
phone.
we know that Google has added APIs to Android to support folding and dual screen devices. It happened in Android 10. There'll be more of that in Android 11, of course. Microsoft said that they were co-engineering with Google, which could be a bit of a stretch, or maybe there's a real partnership going on. I don't know, but it's possible that Google, or Microsoft rather, will contribute to Android in the same way they did with Chrome OS, with Chromium, and thus with Chrome OS. And that partnership will expand, and Microsoft will have some influence, maybe, or at least some understanding of what's coming next in Android, so they can build that stuff into their device. But there is a Microsoft developer piece, and I and many others are curious to see what happens there. Microsoft does support Android development through Xamarin.
Yeah,
it's possible they could extend other developer frameworks to support this device and Android in general, I suppose. But we don't know yet. So there's people freaking out about this right now.
I think a lot of this, there's a couple directions that this could go, obviously, right? We're talking about, and this really makes sense on the Microsoft side. If you really think about it, they've been, all their applications are on there. Office is on there.
Yeah.
I use Outlook on, I'll give you an example. I use Outlook on my iPhone.
Yeah,
I stopped using the Mac client. I started the Apple client. I started using Outlook on everything because I have a bizarre issue with taking. It's so specific, right? I take an Excel spreadsheet. I take the cells and I put it in an email. It only works in Outlook. You could open it on any device. Your email client, whatever you're using, could open it, but I can't take those cells and make it look perfect on another client, except if I do Outlook. So I kind of forced myself to use Outlook, and I'm like, you know what? I forgot how much I liked Outlook.
I like Outlook Mobile a lot.
I like Outlook Mobile, and I also like Outlook on the desktop. So I've kind of...
I don't like Outlook on the desktop at all, but the mobile version.
What is your email client? I'm curious. Your everyday email on the desktop, on the laptop.
So my primary email is Gmail, right? So I just use the Gmail web client.
Oh, you're such a normie, Paul.
Well, not exactly, because I also use a plugin to make it a better app.
But you're doing web browser. You're not doing any kind of desktop application. You're doing all web browser.
Not on a PC.
Interesting.
Or Mac,
yeah. I kind of went backwards when I went to the Mac. I was using Gmail, and then I literally, if I tell you, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I have 22 email accounts that I use for different purposes.
So I went through this email thing in the past year, where I went back and reevaluated what I was doing with email. I'd previously consolidated everything through a single account, and what I realized was I was losing email. And so I decided to be a little less precious about it. I'm not forwarding email anywhere anymore, or pulling email from anywhere into a single place. I will access these things individually. However, I don't mind accessing them all from a single UI, right? And so on the desktop, because my Throat.com is a Gmail account, I use the Gmail client, the web client, it's fine. I pump my other accounts through Windows Mail, which is kind of a terrible email account, but it's just a secondary thing. And I don't really need to see those emails the second they come in. They're not accounts that are important to me, but on a day-to-day basis. But I have to make sure I see those emails, right? On mobile, you can use Microsoft Outlook to do everything from one place. And so I've kind of moved in that direction. If you look at screenshots I've taken and put on my site over the past year, you'll typically see on Android, I have Gmail and Outlook. But I moved that just to Outlook more recently. So Outlook on the, consolidating on the client makes tons of sense, because you're not losing email as these things are transferring around up in the cloud.
Sorry, my phone is, I have yet to figure out how to make this silent on this phone. But
I like, by the way, iPhone, just back in the iPhone world real quick. One thing that really I freaking can't stand is I'll get a text message and it goes ping.
and
It's
just
like the
echoes in your
loudest.
head.
Yeah, yeah. It's just
Yeah.
it's like
Have you
it
gotten like the
shoots.
double one? Sometimes it
Oh
screws up
no.
and it does like bing, 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 bing,
Oh
bing.
please. It's
It
more. It's
radiates
even
throughout
worse
my
than the
body.
Skype
I can
ring
feel it in
sound.
my bones.
Yeah, it's
But
terrible.
so my point was, Microsoft has kind of spread their wings on every
Hmm.
platform. They have a
Yeah.
launcher. They could invest some more time and effort into this launcher and really make it a
Yeah.
Microsoft centric experience when you load up on Android. But here's my question here. Okay, I have two
Hmm.
theories. One, I'm willing to bet Microsoft devices with Android, meaning this
Hmm.
or any other future phone, will be fast tracked to have the latest version of Android. That is a prediction I'm going to make.
I will support you by saying that Microsoft has shown itself to be very friendly to shipping as many updates as is humanly possible on Windows. So yes, they probably will do the same thing on Android.
I anticipate, and I think that'll give them an advantage that
Yeah.
Samsung and others at this moment don't have. I still think it's insane that you could have a
Yeah.
phone come out, a brand new phone come out, like a Samsung Galaxy S9,
Hmm.
and it will not ship with the latest version of Android. It'll ship with
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
version they've decided that at that moment it's coming out, depending on when the
Yeah.
phone comes out. I think Microsoft will have an advantage due to their partnership with Google in this. The other
Hmm.
thing, I anticipate Android applications will start running. They're going to have it in its App Store, in the Microsoft App Store, and they're going to do what Apple is attempting to do at this moment.
What does that mean?
I think you're going to have Android apps running on Windows.
Oh, Android. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
This is something that I think will be a tremendous key for Microsoft to have that ability to do that.
so back when we thought that Light OS was a Chromebook kind of a system, this was one of the things that had come up. It was if they're going to go Chrome OS, I mean, wouldn't they do Android as well? Obviously, there's some advantage to getting Android apps running on Windows. In the past, Microsoft canceled a project to get that very thing happening because it ran too well, and the fear was that it was going to kill their
Yeah.
native app platform for Windows.
But what native
Today's
app platform do
Microsoft,
they have today?
oh yeah, they don't care anymore, right? They've been very honest about how that has failed, and they don't care. They just what they want is people using their applications for the most part. They kind of don't care whether you're running Windows or not. You running Windows doesn't really benefit them a lot, other than that Windows users would be, perhaps more predisposed to run Office and so forth. Um, there was a really interesting conversation. It's probably off the record, but I'll just paraphrase it and say something like, the question was kind of, is Microsoft Surface profitable? And the short answer is no, right? There's no way that, well, they don't. They just literally don't make money on Surface. But the longer answer is, well, it's a little more complicated than that, right? Because Surface is part of this broader ecosystem. There tends to be much more buy-in with Microsoft 365 on a Surface PC than there is on an HP or a Dell or Lenovo, and that gives more Microsoft money to Microsoft. So there's like indirect profits that kind of occur, and overall Surface, because of that, you could consider them as, because they're part of the same part of the business. Maybe they're they're sort of making money because of that. And so a Surface branded Android phone could have the same halo effect for Microsoft 365, right? It will typically go out to businesses. Those businesses would be the types that have highly managed environments. They want to have Microsoft 365. They want to have Microsoft hardware. It's kind of this virtuous cycle kind of a thing. So, um, anyway, back to your original assertion, which is that Microsoft might allow Android apps. It's technically feasible.
Yeah.
Today's Microsoft has no reason to block that. Um, it's not like people are going to use that to run, Google Docs or whatever on Windows. You can already do that in a web
People are
page
already doing
anyway.
it. Yeah.
I mean, who cares? I think listen, uh, the Microsoft store has been de-emphasized so much to the point where, basically everything you can get at the store, you'll be able to get outside of the store, right? That's what they're doing. Maybe this thing is just a big cost center for them. It's just, it would be better for Microsoft if it didn't even have a store, right? It wouldn't have to worry about that nonsense. They don't make money from it anyway, you know?
Well, but they really don't have much in the store.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, just get rid. It's just an embarrassment, you know.
You know, the
You
original
could,
concept, right? Original concept of the App Store, right?
yeah,
Pre Windows 8, right? Pre
yep.
whatever we did with that with the store
Well,
in its
Windows 8 was
current.
it was the
But
launch of
wasn't
it.
the
Yeah,
concept that originally it started off as we need to figure out a way for people to safely download applications? It wasn't even that they got to run these apps for
yeah,
it to be safe.
yeah.
It was safe applications. So they wanted to curate
You're making it
an
sound
app
like a
store.
customer benefit.
Well,
So,
no,
I
but
mean,
that wasn't that the original concept that it was going to curate
yeah, no, of
apps
course,
that
yeah,
were
of
safe for
course.
Microsoft product, that Microsoft said, okay, these pass through whatever tests
Yep,
that they went through, and this is where you go to download. So if you want to download Skype, rather than Googling Skype download, you went to the Microsoft store. If you wanted to download whatever
yeah,
application,
yeah.
you went to the
That's the
Microsoft
theory.
store.
That's the theory.
And then it spun into this
Um,
terrible thing.
Well, it's just because the quality's not there. You know, the problem is Windows desktop is a legacy platform. People who use Windows are very used to going to google.com/Chrome or wherever they go to get software. Um, I don't think people are, I've talked about this kind of thing. Like, people are not super engaged on Windows. They don't sit there and browse around the store looking for stuff. I think people on mobile tend to do that kind of stuff a little, certainly more than they do on a desktop. Um, Windows in particular has a reputation for being the place where you go to get work done. Your phone is where everything fun is. It's just a different environment for most people. So the idea behind the store was a good one. Part of it was Apple envy. You got to remember the time frame when this happened. This was like 2009, 2010. iPhone had exploded. The iPad was coming. Apple was seeing great success with their App Store. Microsoft wanted a piece of that action. How does that work? Um, it's kind of like, Apple is so different from everyone else, right? Here's a company that can make hardware and make huge margins on profits on these hardware devices that no one else can do. Apple realizes an incredible bounty from this 30% VIG that they take off the top of every app transaction in the store. No one else sees money like that. Google has more transactions going on. They make much less money than Apple does. So, Microsoft, like anyone else who has tried, has seen this same effect. And I think to them, it's like, look, there were some good ideas there. There was some good customer benefits. There were some good technologies, right? Apps that come out of the store are essentially running in this kind of contained environment. It's a one-click uninstall if you want to get rid of it. It doesn't have little crappy tendrils everywhere in the registry, making your system run slower over time. And now they can, but in the beginning, they couldn't start a boot time process and run automatically when your PC started. Actually, now they can. But um, I mean, because the store failed, they had to kind of expand the notion of what a store app was. Right now, they have web apps in there, they've got desktop apps in there, they've got games in there. It's all kinds of stuff. And then as of now, you don't need the store to distribute any of that anymore. So they're kind of going back to the old model. They'll leave the store there for people who do want it. If the Android app thing happens, I think the app you're going to get is the Google Play Store. I think I don't think they want to take control of that. It just hasn't worked out for them,
Yeah. So, I'm trying to think what else on the Microsoft side we.
Well, so let's talk about the stuff that's actually happening, just real quick, right?
Okay.
Because I honestly,
one of the most
I think
beautiful
this stuff is
laptops
cool.
I've ever seen. I just want to tell you,
The Surface laptop.
Oh my, I love it.
So here's the 15-inch Surface laptop was my favorite device that was announced at the show, and the reason is there's been this big trend. You see it in phones, but I think we actually saw it first in laptops, 2-in-1s, whatever. Some number of years ago, Dell came out with a version of the Dell XPS 13 where the device was in a 12-inch form factor but had a 13-inch screen, and they did that by getting rid of a lot of the bezels and just fitting a larger panel than would typically happen in a device of that size. And so we've seen everyone does this, right? It's very common. But some PC makers have tried to achieve the same benefits going to larger size devices, 14 and 15-inch laptops. So a 14-inch screen and a 13-inch form factor, that actually works pretty well. But there's something goofy when you move up to 15 inches where you can see it. Like, I have multiple versions of it right in my office. Like the latest generation 13-inch HP Spectre is a tiny, thin, wonderful little laptop. The 15-inch version is this hulking beast. Yeah. There's just something about it. Like it's like they can't figure it out.
Look at this thing. Look at this thing.
Right. Right.
This is gigantic.
It's a tank. Yeah.
Yeah.
I bought one of those and returned it because it was so heavy and so big.
Yeah.
So it looks like the Surface laptop is the first computer in that size that has figured this out. It's amazingly light when you pick it up. When you see how like the size of it and you just kind of pick it up by the corner, you can't believe
Where's the
it's
weight?
that light.
Where's the
I don't.
weight cut happening on this? Because I'll
Right.
give you an example. Like my
Right.
MacBook, it is tremendously heavy, right? This
Mhm.
15-inch MacBook Pro. Very heavy.
Oh, it's made of lead.
It's made, obviously, it's made
You
out of
know,
lead.
that's
It's
what it
slowly
feels like.
poisoning us. But
Yes,
it
exactly.
really, I mean, I saw you last week, and I handed this to, you, to Mary
Yes.
Jo,
Well, yeah.
and Ed Bott.
Okay.
And it was ridiculously heavy. And everyone's like,
That's
wow,
crazy.
this is crazy. What makes this heavy?
Yeah, but at least it
and the
has that
Surface
great
doesn't?
keyboard.
Yeah, tremendous keyboard. Tremendous keyboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great keyboard.
I don't know how they did it. I can't explain it, and we'll have to see how it works in real life. But just picking it up at the event and playing with it, the new Surface laptop is the dream. Like I cannot wait to buy. I'm going to buy one of these things. Like I want this thing so bad. And I know it's just the most prosaic thing in the world. It's another laptop. You know what though? It's a beautiful laptop. Perfect keyboard, perfect touchpad, perfect display. Lightweight, thin. I can't wait.
Yeah, they really, this
Can't wait.
could be possibly, I mean, it's possibly the best the best PC ever made. I mean,
I know it's messed up. It's
it
such a
can be.
copycat thing. It's
It is.
so obviously a MacBook Air ripoff, when it first come out.
It looks like, I mean, if you show anybody the video that they put out
Yeah.
for this, where they show you the edges, the round edge,
Right.
I looked at this and I know, like, knowing what I'm looking at, my brain for
Yeah.
a second thought I opened up the wrong video.
Right, because it looks like a MacBook Pro.
Because it looks like a MacBook Pro. It looks like a
Yeah.
really nice MacBook
Like if you
Pro.
look, like looking down straight on it at the keyboard deck, where you see that kind of inch, gap on the side between the keyboard and the edge of the device, it looks like a MacBook Pro. In its profile, however, it does not. Right? It retains that kind of MacBook Air like thinness. It's hard to explain, and it's the type of thing, like if you looked at the actual weight, if you looked at the actual thickness, you might think, well, it doesn't seem like it's incredible. It just looks normal for whatever it is, it's hard to explain these things. But when when you're holding two different laptops and one is 2.63 pounds and the other one is 2.8 pounds, that kind of difference actually matters quite a bit.
I'm looking at this thing. So what? So the big question here is the
Yeah.
13-inch that nobody's talking about. The
Right.
13-inch is going to have the same type of
Same.
what is it? No, but there's two options, right? There's also
Alcantara and then
Alcantara. Yeah, that's the word I couldn't.
So the Surface
why
laptop was
continue
the
with that?
first. What's that?
Why continue with the Alcantara?
Because some people actually do like it, right? And for whatever it's worth, I think I said this last week probably or whatever, but the first gen Surface laptop that I got was platinum colored. It has a platinum Alcantara material on it, whatever. I've had it for 2, 3, whatever years it is now. I've used that one a lot. I take it on trips. That Alcantara has never gotten gross. At the last Surface event, they introduced Surface Laptop 2. I got that. I have not used it as much as the older one. It's better in some ways. It has a quad core processor versus a dual core or whatever. But man, that thing has gotten scuzzed up pretty bad. And that's been one of the big complaints. Well, it's the two complaints tied to each other. The Alcantara can get gross. And then of course it's not serviceable. In order to get inside of that machine, you have to destroy the Alcantara, and that destroys the entire upper lid of the computer. So you have to literally replace the body if you have to get inside the thing. And so they fixed that, at least for the storage, like the SSD storage, which is like a half height. It looks like an M2 card, but it's like half as long. It's like a square module. So whether you get Alcantara or not, you can actually, a technician can get in with simple tools and not destroy anything. It's nice.
So pretty. I'm in wrestling. They call it a mark. I'm such a mark for this.
Yeah.
I become
No, yeah. Who knows?
Really,
Maybe it will betray me. Most technology does. But as of right now, I mean, I'm really excited about the Surface laptop.
somebody wrote, I was talking to somebody about this online, and they wrote,
Mhm.
yeah, it'd be a shame if this device came out when when all these TV shows had Microsoft Surface devices when they didn't exist.
Yeah.
Remember the Microsoft laptops that never
Yep.
existed? And what was it, CSI did it and all of them?
Well, a lot of they were what they
Yeah.
were doing is taking like or ODM bodies and putting like a Microsoft logo or a Windows logo on the back. Um, and now of course Microsoft has all, they have actual parts, right? So people can just get a Microsoft laptop or whatever if they want to have it in a TV show.
Where do you want to go? You want to talk about Catalina? Is that the direction you're
Yeah.
going
Let
next?
me,
Did you
you
install it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was look, I've always been fascinated by this bridge of mobile and desktop, right? We were just talking about the possibility of putting Android apps on Windows. Google has put Android apps on Chrome OS to great effect, and there's some weirdness there, but whatever. And now Apple is going to put iPad apps on the Mac, right? Really exciting. And we saw last year, the previous version, that there were 3 or 4 whatever Apple apps, stocks and news and whatever the other 2 were. And they seem to work fine. And then at
Now,
WWDC,
did
they
you
talked
do?
it up for Catalina.
Here's a question: did you run the beta?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And did you do a clean install or no? You just did an upgrade.
Uh, no, I upgraded.
Okay.
So, but the thing is, I don't recall any of these. So the technology that runs iPad apps on Mac is called Catalyst. I don't recall there being any Catalyst apps anywhere during the beta.
There was
But
none
as
during the
of the
beta.
final
No.
release, so the first thing I did this last night. Stephanie went out, booted this thing up. It's fine, shipping version of Catalina. Going to the Mac App Store. They must have a thing in here, and they do. It's right at the top. If you open the Mac App Store, you'll see it. It's right at the top.
Yeah.
It's the green graphic.
Yeah, it's a terrible graphic. It says apps you love now on the Mac. So you click
Yeah.
on that. Okay.
Now, I challenge you to find an app you love in that list because as of today, there are, I think, 24 apps. I only recognized one app in that entire list, which is the Rosetta Stone app. And I was like, what
Okay.
is going on here? Like, there's
So
nothing.
I gotta talk about this.
Yeah.
I want to start with this, but I have to tell you, this was not a not a seamless process for me.
Okay.
I ran the GM. I didn't run any of the betas because I need this computer to be functional, and I was
Sure.
told that there were a lot of issues with certain applications. So I ran the
Okay.
GM. I started last week, and I did an upgrade, and I had a bunch of issues with the GM. It just some
Okay.
apps that I have just haven't been updated. It's not Apple's fault. So I did a clean install yesterday.
So you actually wiped out your computer.
So what I did,
How did you do that?
Oh, isn't that, you know what's amazing, Paul? There is no option on this that says I want to blow
No, I know.
everything away and just start
Yeah.
over. Right? You got
Like you can do that on like iPhone offers that.
iPhone offers that, or
Yeah.
Windows or Android. They all offer it.
Yeah.
On the Mac, it's not really as cut and dry as you would imagine. You got to do a weird boot up, and then it's a whole thing. So what I did, I make a bootable USB. So I made a bootable USB with the install. You can't download the install from the App Store anymore. It's a 17 meg file that downloads as it's installing. It's one of those.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you can't
Okay.
download the 8 gig. So I had to find an app that patches, that downloads the 8 gig OS. So you put it on the disk. So whatever, that's fine. Listen,
Okay,
nobody
so
needs to do
in other
this.
words, just so people understand, the problem you're having is if you can boot into the firmware of your computer and do like a reset kind of a thing, but the thing that you get is the version that came on the
That
computer.
came with on the computer.
What you want to
Yes.
do is download the latest version of macOS, which should be a very straightforward process.
Yes.
But you're
So
saying
Apple wants
Yeah.
you to wants you to do the recovery to the OS that came with the computer,
Yeah,
and then
well,
you just
why
do the
not
update.
offer the latest version as
I
an
don't know.
option?
Because it's not necessary.
Well, but it sounds like it
Right.
is.
For me,
I mean,
most people don't care. But for me, I want to have
I don't know.
a clean cut
I'm
experience.
not sure about that. It seems like most people would care.
Let me rephrase that. Most Apple users
Yeah.
don't even know what they're upgrading.
I, okay. I mean, I
Right.
know. I mean, you're right. But I just don't understand.
Why they
Like-
wouldn't give you the option to just blow
Yeah,
everything
like-
away and just start over?
Right.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay. Whatever.
It's weird. It was never there. Maybe they never added it. I don't know. So
Right.
Or you know what? To be honest, I think it's a business for them. They want you to bring it to the Genius Bar.
Yeah, that's very cynical, Andrew. But
you know what? I'm curious. If I go to
yeah.
Apple, right? If I have Apple Care and I go into the Apple store and I say, "This is what I want. The new OS came out. I want you to blow this thing away."
Like you want a concierge service, like you go to Neiman Marcus and you want.
Will they do it?
You're like, listen, I'm going to go grab an Orange Julius. When I get back, just hand me the thing and it's all ready to go.
I want to go to Neiman Marcus and hand my iPhone. Do you think they would do it?
They probably would. They have incredible customer service there.
But I'm curious, if I go into the Apple store and I hand this in and I go, I just want the pure Catalina experience. I want you to just do a clean install. Will they do it for me?
That's a good question. I mean,
someone has to know in the audience. If you know this, tell me.
There's got to be. See, Microsoft. Look, this is the reverse problem that Microsoft has. Microsoft makes it really easy to download the latest version of Windows 10.
Yeah.
But if you want the last version, they make that really hard. But what Apple does is the reverse. They make it really easy to download the version that came on your Mac 2 or 3 years ago, whatever it was. But what you want is the latest version. It's a completely reasonable request.
I don't want to upgrade. Yeah. So I did it, right? I went through the process. I did it.
That's really weird. When you think
I did this
it.
yesterday.
Yeah.
I have yet it's the same problem that I had on the GM. My emails are not indexing.
In the mail app.
In the mail app, yeah. So when I search an email that I know was there or is there,
see, Andrew, this is why you use the web app.
Maybe this is why I should use the web app. I mean, I'm using Outlook now, which is fine, but I did it for testing purposes. It hasn't indexed yet, and I think 2 days is more than enough.
Even now today?
Even now today. That's the problem that I have right now. And I've seen some other people complain about this. The sidecar is an interesting concept. It's very interesting. For whatever reason, it's not working over Wi-Fi for me. It only works if I connect with the cable. And that could be on me. Again, I'm not going to blame them for this. I got to try it again. But Sidecar is very interesting, and I would use Sidecar, especially in my office when I'm doing Excel stuff and I need another screen. So
have you used it yet?
I did, yeah. I used it 2 days ago.
One of the problems I have with most mobile devices, but I would say Apple mobile devices in particular, is that they're very aggressive about power management. They turn the screen off really quick. So if you're using it as a sidecar secondary display, does that thing stays on, right? You don't have to. It stays
on. Yeah, it stayed on for me. But here's the interesting thing. You lose touch functionality on the screen aspect because it's in mirror mode. But if you have an Apple Pen, it'll work.
Isn't
that fascinating? Apple. You could drag and drop within.
How do you connect the iPad? Is it just the lightning cable?
So you could connect with the. I connected directly.
I guess you need a USB-C to lightning
USB
cable,
into lightning.
You'd have to buy separately unless you have a new iPhone.
Yeah, so I connected it like that, or you could do it over Wi-Fi. It also works over Wi-Fi.
Oh.
I had problems with Wi-Fi, but that could be my funky network.
I can see Wi-Fi being a problem, honestly, but okay, that's cool.
I do like. Paul and I were talking before this. I'm really weird about dark mode on desktops. I love dark mode on my phone. On my phone, I absolutely love it. I can't ever go back to just the regular lighter version. But on desktop, I don't really care for light mode. Dark mode.
So let me show you something, Andrew. Like I'm gonna bring up a web browser real quick. Watch the light on my face.
Yeah, everybody look at Paul's face. There you go.
So let me just do an about blank so you get like a white page.
You know what it almost looks like? You're being interrogated by detectives in the 1930s, and they're holding the light on your face.
Yeah. See how it's like a flash.
Yeah.
So that's not my only issue. I'm actually kind of sensitive to bright light, so I prefer the dark mode thing anyway. And actually on this computer, because I'm actually using a laptop, not the normal. It doesn't matter, but this computer actually is mostly in light mode. In Windows, you can mix and match actually, because you can have light mode on the system and dark mode on apps, or vice versa, whatever. It doesn't matter. But I have a darkish background, and so it's not like super glary in my face. And for people watching it, it's not, you don't have that thing. You can see this on podcasts all the time.
Yeah.
The other guy's drifting off a little bit, so he starts to go browse the web while the other guy's talking. His face lights up. It's just, It's just bad. But aside from just using a computer normally, I just like having less light coming out
You
of the
like having
screen.
it. I think you know what? I honestly think it's a personal preference. Like my wife
Yeah.
loves it.
Right.
And she's like, "Oh my god, I can't ever go back to it. It's too bright on the other side." It's just a personal
Right.
personal preference. I kind of like this. Here's something that I found bizarre. So on the Mac side, so you have light mode. I'm sorry, let me just go. So you have light, you have dark, and then you have auto. And under auto, it determines what time of day it is, and it'll change the mode. And the same thing with the desktop. So your desktop picture is Catalina Island, right? And depending on the time of day, the image changes to the sunlight and the night light, whatever.
Yep.
It doesn't work for me, and I don't know if this is how it's set up or not. It doesn't work for me unless I close my computer and I open it.
Oh, so I just leave mine on dark. I just want it dark.
So if I leave it open, it'll stay on whatever it was at the time that I opened the lid. It doesn't automatically do it.
Right.
So I don't know if that's by design or just not working properly. So the best part of this is the macOS app. I guess the developers bringing over the iOS apps to the macOS.
Right.
Paul brought this up. I opened it up right now, and these are the applications that exist. GoodNotes 5 for $7.99.
Oh, that's the other thing, by the way. Sorry, I should say there's a little bit of a controversy. So this morning there was a story in Bloomberg about this. Netflix is bailed; they're not doing it. They used to. There was a couple of games Apple used to talk about, like Asphalt 9, that have disappeared.
Yeah.
But the big problem is, well, for users, is if you bought an app on the iPad, you have to buy it again.
You got to buy it again.
If you get it on the Mac.
That is not how I believe it was presented when they spoke about this.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think this has been a development nightmare for these guys. And that's the reason why this isn't working.
The other thing is Apple made it sound like all you got to do is check a box in Xcode and you get like a Mac app. And it's like, no, that's not. There's all kinds of weird little problems. Like if you're like a goofy example, you're watching a video in an app on your iPad, whatever that video is. There's no mouse cursor, right? So it's like something you don't have to think about. So after a few seconds of inactivity, the on-screen controls will disappear into the background. You're just watching the movie. It's nice. When you put that on a Mac, if you don't make any changes, the on-screen controls disappear, but the mouse cursor sits there over the video because the iPad app doesn't know anything about a mouse cursor. Yeah. It's one of those things you have to account for.
Well, this was the problem that Google had, right? Bringing their Android apps to Chrome OS. This is why it took forever.
It's actually worse for Google.
It took
because
forever.
Most of those apps are phone apps, right? They're not. They're not designed to look good on a big screen.
Yeah,
it's a bigger problem.
Here are the apps, right? GoodNotes 5. Never used it. It's handwritten notes.
Actually, let me ask you up front. I'm sorry to interrupt again, but scanning over the list of apps, do you recognize any of them?
Yes, I recognize one of them. It's Zoho.
Oh, Zoho, like the Office productivity thing?
Yeah, like the expense reports and the inventory management.
Oh, okay, actually,
the only reason why I recognize that is because I implemented it for one of my clients. To use for just overall.
I've heard of it. I must not have seen it or whatever. Okay,
it's the only thing, but I don't know why you would prefer to use the app version of Zoho and not the web-based version of Zoho. I don't know what the benefit of that would be.
Do they charge for it?
Let's see. No, it's free.
Okay,
but they do have an application that's $124.
Ew.
It is AAC for those who can't speak. Okay, so it's research-based vocabulary for language development. So let's talk. Proquillo to Go is an easy communication app for people who cannot speak or need help being understood. Okay, so it's an accessibility type application for people with speech issues. So it's word to speak, natural speak voices. Okay, and it includes real children's voices. So this is a very specific application for $134. They're the first ones that jumped on this. PDF viewer, Jira Cloud, Carrot Weather. For $15, a weather app for $15. Meet Carrot, the crazy powerful weather app.
Oh, is this the one that makes fun of you or something? Is Carrot the
Carrot Weather is a crazy powerful, privacy cautious weather app that delivers hilarious twisted forecasts? Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Is it $15?
I how much would you pay to have someone insult you all day long, Andrew? I mean,
You know what? It depends. Depends on the person. I know a lot of people that are into that.
sure.
E-sign apps. It's a Zoho sign, so you sign applications.
Okay.
Allegory, a beautiful note-taking application. How many note-taking apps do we need? Who are these people that don't
Yeah.
use the standard note-taking apps? Money Coach. It's a budgeting and goal loan service. Record the speed. What is this one?
Yeah, but okay. So
Yeah,
the
whatever.
problem is what we're not seeing is Hulu, Amazon Prime
How about
Video.
this? We're not seeing
Um,
Instagram. We're not seeing
yeah,
Twitter. Twitter put
right.
out in June.
Twitter's coming, by the way. They are coming.
Well, thank God, because here's the
Yeah,
problem with this. And I have a big issue with this. Twitter has killed third-party applications.
yeah.
Okay, I
Oh, they've also
rely.
killed first-party
Well,
applications.
first-party apps
Yeah,
also. Yeah, you can use it. So on my Mac,
right.
I use Tweetbot. And
Okay.
Tweetbot was phenomenal because I would be able to see all my Twitter accounts that I manage, all like
Yeah.
80 of them. By the way, this is a very specific problem. Most people don't have these issues. Most people use Twitter on their phone. They don't use it on the desktop. They rarely go on the desktop version. I only use Twitter. I mean, I rarely tweet from my phone.
Right, me too. Yeah,
I scroll and I read stuff, but everything I do
yeah.
is
Yep, on the PC.
yeah.
Yep.
So for me, like using Tweetbot was a necessity because I have all these accounts and I'm able to kind of bounce through all of them. They killed, I mean, it's all half-assed now. It barely works. Tweetbot 3 is terrible. I use this application called Flume, Flume, for Instagram, and I could post my Instagram images and I could do all my Instagram stuff on the desktop, which I love. But these services are killing this. They don't want you using these third parties. I mean, that's the reality of it. So for me, it's a little bit of a struggle. I actually got a warning from Instagram for using this application, told me that I'm not allowed to use third-party applications. They
Yep.
warned me. So I actually
Uh,
wrote back to support. I'm like, what? So what do you suggest I use on desktop? I don't use a phone.
right.
They haven't.
They suggest you use a phone.
They haven't wrote back to me. So I find this interesting. I mean, listen, it's a refined app, a refined OS. I'm sorry, and it's fine, but there's no major. People are saying that this is like a big improvement and big jump. This is not a big jump. I mean, it's another evolution in the operating system. It would have been a huge jump if they had 300 applications that came over from iOS on the
Well,
Mac.
right. So over time, I think we can agree. Obviously, this can only improve. There will be more. It will, and over time, it probably will be the big deal. I think the problem was the expectation was that it was going to be huge right away, right? So they did I think it was 4 test apps that were Apple apps in the previous release. They talked about opening it up. Here it comes, and it launched with like nothing.
Yeah.
You know, it's weird.
Uh,
It's just weird how um it's just weird how terrible it is. I mean, I'm just surprised by it.
yeah. I don't know. I found it interesting. I mean, Sidecar's cool. They've made improvements, I guess, to the operating system, but to me, it's all the same. It's the same exact thing. There's no big major changes, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. Let me see what else before I forget here. I wanted to get your opinion on the iPhone 11 Pro.
Okay.
What do
Um
you think? You've had a week with it.
yeah, I mean, I like it. Obviously all the same old problems with iOS are there. There are weirdisms going back and forth between Android and iOS. Some of them are just very specific to my own thing, right? I happen to use Google Fi. You got to go through some hoops to make it work on the iPhone, and it works. It's fine. Um, the camera is very good. I don't. I can't. I don't really feel like it's better than what I get on the Pixel or the Huawei phones, night mode or whatever. It's good. It's very good. Um, night mode was nothing previously on the iPhone, and now it's great. You know,
Yeah.
I wish it wasn't quite as automatic as it is. You don't always know what you're going to get when you start taking the picture. You've seen that kind of pro. You might have seen like sometimes you take a picture in the dark, it just takes a picture. Sometimes the camera kind of flashes and then that little dial comes up and it does the thing where the thing goes up and down the dial. And it's just hold the phone still and
Yeah.
you kind of holding it there like, is it going to take the picture? Um, it's but the results are very good. I mean, they're very good, and they're right up there. I mean, I think that's cool. I went for a walk today, for example, took some pictures. It's kind of dreary out, not a lot of blue sky or sun. The pictures are kind of washed out, and a Pixel or a Huawei would not wash out those photos. Like they're still going to be kind of crappy because it's crappy out, but there would be more contrast. They would do more with the conditions than the Apple phone is doing. So I don't know. It's a nice device. Like as you noted, it's heavier and thicker. The battery life is fantastic. You know, I took pictures with this phone at a concert on Thursday night, and you might have seen the picture. They're on Instagram if you want to see them. But I thought those pictures came out fantastic and are as good as anything I could have taken with any other phone. I use the zoom to get in close and they're slightly blurry. It's a concert, whatever. But I think they're great for what they are.
So what I'm
So
what I'm curious about is how the quality of the camera changes with Deep Fusion, because the next version,
yeah,
13.2,
yeah,
has
yeah,
Deep Fusion, which is an entirely new technique
yep.
for the iPhone to use to kind of
Um,
improve the photos with the noise and everything.
I'm a little. I have not tried it. So what I have done is watch some of the videos people have made. The differences are very subtle right now. I think the way this is going to work is it's going to be like portrait mode when it debuted on the iPhone 7 Plus or whatever, where it was like, well, yeah, okay, it kind of works, but it's a little dodgy. And the iPhone 12 will come out and it'll get a little bit better, and the iPhone 12s will come out and okay, like I think they'll eventually get it there. But but hey, whatever. Look, the overall situation is very, very good. Apple does the thing that OnePlus does, that Samsung does, where you've got three lenses. You basically have three controls on screen in the camera app where you can have like 1x, 2x, or ultra wide. It's nicely done. Um, Mostly it's great. I mean, you can nitpick about like one of the things it doesn't do, for example, like night mode only works on the normal lens, like on the wide lens. If you put it in ultra wide, there's no night mode. And other phones offer that, on ultra wide. So, whatever. Anyone who's buying an iPhone is not comparing things that way. They're not like, oh, you mean there's an Android phone that does one thing this phone does, like, doesn't do. I guess I'll switch platforms. Um, it's not really the way people think. So, to me, the big news is they've vaulted from being nowhere to being
Yeah.
right where they need to be for night shots, and I think that's cool.
And
They've
yeah,
done a good job with that.
I have to use it more at night. I thought I would have more opportunities to take photos at
Yeah, yeah,
and I really haven't. And I was
right.
surprised by that, because when this happened, I was like, oh, this is going to be great, because the biggest problem is low light photography on these phones for me.
Yep.
You're at a bar, you're at a restaurant, but I noticed that most of the time, like if I'm like with Jess, like I'm doing like a selfie, I'm not
Yeah,
like taking pictures of something. So
sure.
it doesn't really impact me as much. Obviously the front facing
No, I
camera
know,
is
but you
better,
know what?
but
Every once, but when it does, you're going to be happy it happens.
yeah.
I like taking shots out at night, like out in the city where there are very dark areas and then some nice neon type lights or whatever. Last night, we had a rainstorm and I went outside in the dark and took pictures in the rain that I thought came out pretty great. We sit and listen to music in the sunroom in the dark, and we've got these colored hue lights in there. And if you've got a nice camera for night sight type stuff, it really captures the colors in the dark really well. And the iPhone does really well, not in ultra wide, but it's good. I mean, it's kind of like I just reviewed the OnePlus 7T, right? So one of the best phones I've ever used. Camera falls a little short for me. I really, really care about the camera, but I could live with it, right? It's like the Samsung Note 10 is like that. It's like I could live with it. Like the camera's not where I want it, but I could live with it. I would say this is a step up from those two for sure across the board, but I would still prefer a Pixel or a Huawei for sure, because I really, really care about the camera stuff, and to me, those are still better. But I'll keep using it.
Yeah.
I'll use this. I'll probably use this as my phone until the Pixel 4 arrives, whenever that happens.
So that's
And
next week.
well, but will it arrive next week? I mean, it might. I might be able to pre-order it and get it late in the month or something. So I could be using this for weeks to come. that's cool. I need to review it and everything, but um, I just happen to prefer Android to iOS, and whatever, who cares? But this is a really nice phone. It's really nice.
Yeah. All right, Paul. Let's wrap it up. Got a few minutes to do a bonus show?
Yep.
Cool. Guys, go to the website, gfqnetwork.com. You can subscribe to the podcast. We're everywhere. We're on Thurrott.com. We're on GFQ. We're on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. If you watch the show, watch us on YouTube. That's the best way. I always recommend it. If you're watching, watch on YouTube. If you're listening, we're everywhere podcasts are available. If you have, by the way, if you have a Mac or if you have an iPhone, for whatever reason, because they split a while ago on how to do the podcast and everything, go and check it out again and resubscribe. Because I think a lot of our subscribers kind of went away when they kind of split this. Like right now, it's saying that, like even my own subscription, it's not showing up anymore that I subscribe to the show, which is weird. So go ahead and resubscribe to the podcast. For all things Paul, go to Thurrott.com. Everything he's up to, everything. I mean, just tons of articles going up over there. It's always my reference point when we're doing the show. I'm trying to see what's going on here. And that's it. Oh, by the way, you want the bonus show? Go to patreon.com/whatthetech. Get the bonus show there. Paul and I are going to record right now. So we'll see y'all next time. Take care.